This is the story of a paradox, one that's stitched into your clothes, coded into your electronics, and hiding in plain sight in almost everything you own. You walk into a Walmart, you order something off Amazon, or you unwrap the latest gadget from Apple. The brand? American. The design? American. The logo? Proudly printed in California, or Oregon, or Boston. But flip the label, peel back the parts, trace the wires, and you'll find something else entirely. Three words that have shaped the global economy for over 2 decades. Made in China. How did China, a country thousands of miles away, with a completely different language, culture, and economic system, become the world's factory floor and the biggest supplier of American products? Why do American companies, some of the most valuable, most innovative firms in history, rely so heavily on one foreign nation to produce their goods? And more importantly, what does that mean for your wallet, your job, and your future? Let's take the iPhone, arguably the most iconic American product of the 21st century. Designed in California, sold in over 190 countries, used by over 1 billion people. And yet, it's assembled in China, piece by piece, part by part, by a Taiwanese company called Foxconn, inside massive industrial complexes employing hundreds of thousands of workers. In fact, if you ever get your hands on an iPhone box, the label doesn't hide this reality. It says it right there. Designed by Apple in California, assembled in China. This isn't an exception. It's the norm. From Nike sneakers to Hasbro toys, Microsoft devices to Tesla's electronics, the fingerprints of Chinese manufacturing are everywhere. And the strange twist? Many Americans don't even realize it. See, when we say China is the biggest supplier of American products, we're not just talking about cheap plastic or novelty toys. We're talking about the very core of the United States consumer economy. The stuff we buy, the brands we trust, the items we depend on, they don't just come from China. They're built in China, shipped from China, and in many ways, made possible by China. But how do we get here? Why did America, a nation that once prided itself on being the industrial powerhouse of the world, move so much of its production overseas? Why China and not, say, Mexico or India or back home in Detroit or Pittsburgh? And what happens if that system breaks? To understand this paradox, we have to go back, not just a few years, but decades, to the fall of manufacturing in the West, to the rise of global capitalism, to a pivotal moment when China opened its gates and America walked right in. It wasn't just about cheap labor. That's an oversimplification. It was about scale, strategy, and silent transformation. In the late 20th century, America began to shift. The Rust Belt started to rust. Steel mills closed. Textile factories moved. And white-collar tech companies started asking a simple question. Why make something here for $1.10 when we can make it there for $1? China, on the other hand, was ready. After decades of isolation, it was opening up, inviting foreign companies to build, to invest, to produce. And so began one of the greatest transfers of industrial capacity in human history. China became the assembly hub, the exporter, the final stop before your phone, your shoes, your TV landed on American shelves. And yet, here's the twist. These products still feel American because the brand is American. The logo is American. The marketing is American. But manufacturing? That's outsourced, licensed, contracted. A global spiderweb where parts come from Japan, Germany, Korea, but assembly happens in China, where entire cities are built around fulfilling your next Amazon order. These are not just factories. They're ecosystems, 24-hour machines churning out precision-made electronics at a scale the world has never seen. This is where the American dream gets manufactured today, in export zones with 100,000 workers, where supply chains are faster, cheaper, and more coordinated than almost anywhere else on Earth. Think about that. A product can be conceived in Silicon Valley and be in your hands, fully built, within weeks, thanks to Chinese infrastructure, ports, and logistics. That's the power of China's supply chain dominance. Not just low wages, but raw scale, speed, and logistical mastery. But here's the question we have to ask. What happens when that system is tested? What happens when COVID shuts down ports? When trade wars introduce tariffs? When geopolitics enters the boardroom? What happens when a supplier starts to wield power? In this series, we'll unpack it all. The rise of China's industrial empire, America's manufacturing decline, the silent shift in power, and what it means for the next generation of consumers, workers, and citizens. Because to understand the future, we must first understand the paradox of the present. It didn't happen by accident. The rise of China's manufacturing empire was not a miracle. It was engineered. 40 years ago, China was a sleeping giant. A vast population, yes, but largely rural, underdeveloped, and closed off from the global economy. Factories were rare. Exports? Almost non-existent. In the 1970s, the average Chinese citizen earned less than $200 a year. But then came Deng Xiaoping, and with him, a revolution, not of arms, but of markets. When Deng took power in 1978, he did something radical. He opened China to the world, not through Western democracy, but through what he called socialism with Chinese characteristics. In plain terms, capitalism in a communist cage. He created special economic zones, Shenzhen being the first. These were experimental cities where foreign investors were welcomed, taxes were lowered, labor was cheap, and the rules of Western trade applied. American companies came pouring in, and what they found was a gold mine: land, labor, and a government that would do anything to make manufacturing work. By the early 2000s, China wasn't just making toys and t-shirts. It was producing laptops, iPhones, and industrial machinery. China invested trillions into infrastructure: high-speed rail, superports, highways that reached inland provinces. It wasn't just about cheap labor anymore. It was about moving goods fast, at scale, and across oceans. This is what the West underestimated. China wasn't just cheap. It was efficient, a nation-sized factory with logistics that outpaced even the most developed countries. China's workforce became its greatest weapon. Millions of disciplined, low-cost, skilled workers. Migrants from rural villages flooded into coastal cities. At its peak, Foxconn alone employed over 1.2 million people. That's more than the entire population of San Jose, California, working in a single corporate supply chain. They worked 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. Why? Because for many of them, this was the ticket out of poverty. And for China, this was the rocket fuel for economic takeoff. But behind all this was the Chinese Communist Party. It wasn't just a political force. It was the architect of industrial power. They set 5-year plans, guided by economists and engineers, not career politicians. They didn't just talk about manufacturing. They designed it. Entire cities were built around factories. Entire regions around supply chains. Of course, there's another side to the story, one full of accusations. Intellectual property theft, forced tech transfers, copycat designs. Was China stealing ideas? Or just doing what the West did a century ago, learning fast, adapting faster, and refusing to play by colonial rules? By 2010, the numbers told the story. Over 28% of global manufacturing came from China. The United States, Japan, Germany all lagged behind. China wasn't just the factory for America. It became the factory for the world. From Angola to Amsterdam, Beijing to Brazil, Chinese-made goods were everywhere. What made it possible? Central planning mixed with capitalist incentives, infrastructural ambition, political stability with tight control, a massive, hungry labor force, and strategic international partnerships. This combination, not found anywhere else on Earth, is what made China's rise inevitable. The dragon didn't wake up overnight. It was called to rise, and it answered the call with factories, freight trains, and 5-year plans. Every empire has a price, and America's reliance on China? It's no exception. For decades, the United States enjoyed low-cost goods, massive profits, and streamlined global supply chains. American consumers got affordable smartphones, cheap t-shirts, high-tech gadgets, and seemingly unlimited convenience. But beneath the polished shelves of Walmart and the glowing screens of our devices, cracks were forming. Let's talk about the real cost. Number 1, the hollowing of American industry. Steel mills once thundered across Pittsburgh. Detroit used to roll out millions of cars every year. Small towns across Ohio and Michigan had factories that employed generations of families. Today, rusted gates, broken windows, empty lots. Why? Because when manufacturing moved to China, jobs didn't just disappear. they evaporated. Between 1999 and 2011, the United States lost over 2 million manufacturing jobs due to Chinese import competition. This became known as the China shock. Entire communities were economically gutted, families fractured. The American dream, once built on hard work in a factory, became a fading memory. Number 2, strategic vulnerabilities. Dependence isn't just about money. It's about power. Take semiconductors, the chips that power everything from smartphones to fighter jets. The United States designs them, but many are made in Asia. If China were to cut off rare earth minerals tomorrow, materials needed for batteries, satellites, even military weapons, the United States would be in a chokehold. And during COVID, the world saw what happens when supply chains snap. Medical masks, PPE, ventilators. Suddenly, America had to beg for supplies it used to produce. Dependence became a national security threat. Number 3, intellectual property and espionage. Then there's the invisible cost. The ideas being siphoned silently. Officials have accused China of engaging in systematic intellectual property theft. Tech blueprints, military designs, pharmaceutical research. Trillions of dollars worth of innovation leaked, stolen, or copied. In 2018, the FBI warned that economic espionage by China was the biggest long-term threat to America's economic and national security. What's worse, some American companies handed it over willingly in exchange for market access. They thought they were gaining 1 billion customers. Instead, they created a competitor. Number 4, the price of cheap. Let's not ignore the moral cost either. Many Chinese factories operate under harsh labor conditions, long hours, low pay, sometimes even forced labor in regions like Xinjiang, where human rights groups allege systemic abuse against the Uyghur population. Yet those same factories make parts for global brands. So the question lingers in the background of every bargain. If the price tag is low, who paid the difference? Number 5, political leverage. When your supply chain is rooted in a geopolitical rival, you're not just importing goods, you're importing risk. China can, and has, used its economic power for leverage. Australia criticized China. Beijing hit them with wine and barley tariffs. Lithuania dared open a Taiwanese office. Chinese freight stopped flowing. What if tomorrow it was the United States? Dependence becomes a sword that cuts both ways. Number 6, American brands at risk. Apple makes over 90% of its products in China. Tesla builds gigafactories there. Even Boeing, a symbol of United States engineering, sources parts through Chinese firms. But what happens if tensions escalate? What if tariffs return? Or worse, war breaks out over Taiwan? These companies could lose billions overnight. Share prices would plummet. Consumers would face shortages. The United States economy, still recovering from inflation and political division, would take another hit. Number 7, the illusion of control. For years, Americans believed that by trading with China, they'd liberalize it. That economic openness would lead to political reform. But instead of China becoming more like America, American business became more reliant on China. Hollywood censors its films. NBA stars apologize for tweets. Tech firms walk a tightrope, afraid to upset Beijing. This isn't just economic dependence. It's cultural entanglement. Number 8, when a supply chain breaks. Remember when ships were stuck off the coast of California in 2021? Shelves went empty. Car prices soared. Simple goods like baby formula became scarce. Why? Because a virus in Wuhan triggered chaos across a fragile, globalized system. All roads led back to one question. What happens when everything is made somewhere else? Number 9, the trade deficit trap. America's trade deficit with China ballooned to over $300 billion in recent years. That means the United States imports far more than it exports. This imbalance weakens you, industry, and increases debt. It's like being in a one-sided relationship where one partner always gives and the other just takes. China, in turn, uses that surplus to invest in ports, railroads, and digital infrastructure across the globe. While America consumes, China builds. Number 10, wake-up call. The pandemic was a shock, but it wasn't the only one. In 2023, a ban on rare earth exports reminded the world just how much power China holds over global industries. Suddenly, everyone started asking, how do we let this happen? The truth? It didn't happen overnight. It happened because of short-term thinking, because of the illusion that globalization had no downside. Conclusion: the true cost. America's dependence on China brought prosperity, but also vulnerability. It gave consumers cheap goods, but left entire industries gutted. It fed stock markets, but endangered sovereignty. And now, the bill is coming due. The question isn't just economic. It's existential. Can a superpower remain a superpower if it can't even make its own shoes? Power doesn't always come with a flag or a fighter jet. Sometimes it looks like a shipping container gliding silently through a Chinese port. In the global chessboard of trade, China doesn't just play smart. It owns the board beneath the pieces. While the world watched the prices, China built the pipes, the arteries, the lifelines of the 21st century economy. And it all begins at the ports. Number 1. Port power. China's maritime mastery. Start with Shanghai, the busiest port on Earth. Not just in Asia, not just in the Pacific, on the entire planet. Follow the cargo. 47 million containers in a single year. That's over 128,000 every day. Stacked, sorted, shipped with machine-like precision. Ningbo Zhoushan, another titan, handling oil, gas, bulk cargo, and millions of containers. It's not just a port. It's a fortress of trade. These ports aren't just massive. They're modern, fully digitized, controlled by AI logistics, integrated with inland rail and truck lines. A ballet of metal, movement, and data. Meanwhile, in the United States, West Coast ports like Los Angeles and Long Beach choke on delays. Old systems, union battles, limited automation. The contrast isn't just efficiency, it's ambition. Number 2, rail, roads, and reach. China's inland advantage. But China's power doesn't stop at the coastline. Its railways stretch like veins into every industrial zone, mining town, and manufacturing hub. The high-speed rail system, already the largest in the world, isn't just for passengers. Cargo zooms across provinces faster than some goods move across United States cities. And then the trucks, millions of them, coordinated through advanced logistics networks, GPS, and AI platforms. From factory floor to ocean container, a product made in inland China can be on a ship to Los Angeles within 48 hours. Try moving something that fast across Texas. While America debates infrastructure bills, China builds mega projects at record pace. Tunnels, bridges, special economic zones, all connected like clockwork. Number 3, the just-in-time revolution. In a modern economy, timing isn't just important. It's everything. Companies don't want inventory sitting in warehouses. They want it delivered exactly when needed. No sooner, no later. This is the world of just-in-time delivery systems. And China became its beating heart. From auto parts to smartphone chips, entire industries came to rely on Chinese precision. Why keep 6 weeks of inventory when China can ship it in 2? It wasn't just cheap, it was faster. Cheaper to make in China, faster to ship from China, more predictable than domestic supply chains. This gave China more than a manufacturing edge. It gave it control over time itself, the one currency nobody can print. Number 4, America's infrastructure gap. Now pan the camera to America. Cracked highways, aging ports, freight trains delayed behind suburban crossings, an outdated logistics system trying to power a digital economy. In 2021, a ship got stuck in the Suez Canal and the United States economy shivered. In 2022, a trucker protest in Canada sent ripples through Detroit's auto plants. That's not resilience, that's fragility. America, the world's richest country, depends on a fragile, creaky infrastructure that buckles under pressure. And while politicians argue over spending packages, China lays more track, expands more ports, and digitizes every mile of its trade routes. Number 5, Belt and Road. The global extension. China's logistics dominance doesn't stop at home. Enter the Belt and Road Initiative, a sprawling, trillion-dollar global project connecting Asia, Africa, Europe, and beyond. Rail lines through Central Asia, ports in Africa, highways in Eastern Europe, fiber optic cables in the Indian Ocean. It's more than infrastructure. It's a spiderweb of influence. Countries don't just trade with China. They rely on China. And as global crises multiply, pandemics, wars, climate shocks, control over logistics becomes the ultimate power move. Because in a world of scarcity, whoever moves goods moves destiny. Number 6, strategic dependence. The genius of China's strategy? It didn't need to conquer anything, just deliver it faster. American companies, obsessed with profit margins, shifted operations overseas. Not because they hated America, but because China could move faster, cheaper, smarter. That's the real battle. Not tariffs or tweets. Not even trade wars. It's logistics, infrastructure, delivery. When every factory is optimized, every port digitized, and every train AI tracked, you don't just make products, you move power. Conclusion. Who really runs the supply chain? So ask yourself, who really runs the world economy? Is it the innovator, the brand, the one who designs the phone? Or is it the one who assembles it, boxes it, ships it, and delivers it within 48 hours across the planet? Power doesn't always wear a suit or carry a title. Sometimes it wears a reflective vest and drives a crane in Ningbo. In the story of global trade, infrastructure isn't the background. It is the story, and right now, China is writing it, one container at a time. Let's talk about something we all feel but rarely question. You walk into a store and spot it. A t-shirt for $5, a blender for $10, a smartphone for $300. And for a brief second, you pause and wonder, how is this even possible? How can something designed, engineered, mined, assembled, boxed, shipped halfway around the world cost less than a night out? Well, the short answer? It's not magic. It's math, but not the kind you learned in school. This is economics, the gritty, hidden kind, the kind that hides behind price tags and inside policy papers. And today, we're going to decode it. This is the economics behind it all, how the modern global economy creates cheap and who really pays the price. Number 1, labor cost arbitrage. Moving work without moving people. Let's start with the elephant in the factory. Labor. In the United States, a factory worker might earn $20 an hour, plus health insurance, benefits, maybe a union pension. In China, maybe $2 an hour. In Bangladesh, 50 cents, sometimes less. No benefits, no protections, no fallback plan. And this is the core of something economists call labor cost arbitrage. Instead of paying more to workers at home, companies move the jobs overseas where wages are lower. They don't have to move the people, just the work. Let's take our $5 t-shirt. That shirt probably started as cotton, grown in India, spun into thread in Pakistan, woven into fabric in China, then stitched in Vietnam, dyed in Indonesia, shipped in a container to Los Angeles, unloaded, warehoused, tagged, and put on a shelf. And still, it cost $5. How? Because each step in that chain was designed to pay the absolute minimum for labor, while maximizing profit at the end of the line. It's not illegal. It's not even unusual. It's the default. Number 2, why the United States just can't compete on cost. Now, here's the part that stings. America can't make that same shirt. Not at that price. Not because American workers are lazy or less skilled. In fact, they're some of the most productive in the world. The problem is they're also expensive. And that's not a flaw. It's by design. America has minimum wage laws, workers' safety standards, environmental protections, insurance mandates, corporate taxes, labor unions, and a legal system where you can sue a company if it mistreats you. All of this is good, morally, but economically, it adds friction, cost, delay. So when American manufacturers do the math, it often looks like this. If I make it here, it costs $15. If I outsource it, it costs $5. What do I choose? We've taught businesses that the answer is always the cheaper option. And so, over the past 40 years, factories have closed, towns have hollowed out, and the so-called Rust Belt became exactly that, rusted. Number 3, the hidden costs of cheap. But hold on, just because something is cheap to buy doesn't mean it's cheap to make. That $5 shirt, it still costs resources, water, chemicals, electricity, human energy. It's just that someone else is paying those costs. And not in dollars. They're paying in asthma, in poisoned rivers, in lost childhoods. Let me be blunt. Many foreign factories cut corners to keep prices low. They pollute. They underpay. They overwork. They break every rule that would land a company in court. In some cases, it's modern slavery, just with a barcode. And we, the consumers, never see it. We just see the price tag. We see the sale. We smile at the discount and move on. But if you follow that product home, back to the village where it was stitched, back to the factory where the dye ran red into the river, you'd see what cheap really costs. Number 4, environmental damage. when cheap pollutes the planet. Here's something nobody tells you at checkout. That plastic phone case? It's made with oil. That shirt? It took 700 gallons of water to grow the cotton, dye it, and wash it before packaging. That $10 blender? Made with rare earth metals mined under brutal conditions, often by children in the Congo. Why? Because environmental regulation is expensive. In the United States or Europe, factories have to treat wastewater. They have to capture emissions. They have to follow laws. In some parts of the world, they just dump it, burn it, hide it. It's faster. It's cheaper. And as long as it doesn't happen in your backyard, it's out of sight, out of mind. But make no mistake, every cheap good comes with an ecological debt, and the planet always collects. Number 5, the economics of desperation. Now, let's talk about ethics. Why do people work in these conditions? Why accept pennies an hour, 16-hour days, toxic fumes? The answer is heartbreaking in its simplicity. They have no better choice. For many, it's factory work or nothing. No unemployment checks, no social safety net, no second chance. So they say yes to wages that won't feed a family, to hours that break their bodies, to conditions that Western workers wouldn't tolerate for a day. This isn't just an economic imbalance. It's a moral one. And we, in wealthier countries, are complicit, not because we're evil, but because we've built an economy where the system rewards the lowest bidder. And when lives are cheaper somewhere else, the system will always move there. Number 6, the real question, who pays? Let's return to our $5 shirt one more time. By the time it reaches you, every piece of it has passed through dozens of hands, countries, and currencies. But here's the trick. The price you pay at checkout isn't the full story. The rest of the cost is invisible. It's in the carbon dumped into the air, the waste poured into rivers, the jobs lost in Detroit, the health lost in Dhaka, the dignity lost in Saigon. This is the hidden math of globalization. It's the externalized cost, when someone else pays the price so we don't have to. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Number 7, the illusion of choice. But hey, you might say, I'm just a consumer. I don't set the prices. True, but our choices signal demand, and the system follows that signal. When we reward low prices above all else, the system finds ways to deliver them, even if it means sending jobs overseas, cutting corners, or exploiting labor. And when we ask, why is everything made in China? The answer is simple, because that's what we paid for. So, what do? This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Because the next chapter of the economy, the one being written right now, is going to depend on what we value. Speed or sustainability, price or principles. It doesn't mean every purchase has to be a protest, but maybe, just maybe, we start asking different questions. Not just is it cheap, but is it fair? Is it sustainable? Is it worth it? Because behind every low price, there's a story. And the economics behind it? Well, that's no bargain. We live in a world where convenience is king and price is power. But the real cost of what we consume is paid somewhere, by someone, every time. So the next time you hold a cheap product in your hand, ask not just how much, but who paid. Because the answer might just change how you see the world. And that's just the beginning. In part 2, we'll dive even deeper into how China became America's factory, the tariff wars reshaping global trade, and what it all means for the future of your wallet. If this opened your eyes even a little, hit that subscribe button, because the next chapter is one you won't want to miss.